Alright, so I'm going to make sure I go into the animation drop down menu. Okay, so in the upper left hand side of my, by default it says modeling. I'm going to go to animation. And then I'm going to click on what we call visualize. Now, since my character has this kind of control rig, I want to see the ghost or the in-between frames of this particular ball. So if you have this rig and you're using it, that's fine. Make sure you select the ball. If you do not have this rig, then you're going to be selecting the ball anyways. One thing I don't want to do is click on this line here and do the animation snapshot. Otherwise, I'm going to see multiple frames of that particular line, which is not what I want to see. So I'm going to click on the ball, go to Visualize, Create Animation Snapshot, Option Box. And I'm just going to work on the first bounce, which is from frame 1 to frame 15. And I'll change the start frame to 1, keep the start frame at 1, and then go to end frame at frame 15. So I'll press that, and I'll click Snapshot. Now what you see is my ball, right, obviously. But sometimes it's very difficult to like select the ball and move it. So you can see at frame 1 it's going from the top all the way to the bottom. And I'll frame in a little bit more. Okay. So if I scrub through, then that's my ball. I'm actually going to press 6 so I can see the color. Alright. So I'm going to click on my locator. I'll go to frame 1. And what I'm trying to do is get a nice arc. Now remember, these gray spheres just represent my in-between frames. They're not important. I don't want to click on one of these frames and move it like this, right? Because this isn't going to do anything for my animation, right? That doesn't do anything. And you know that it's not your ball when it tells you that it is transform 1_10. So if I click on my ball, let's see here, it tells me that the name is that. I'm actually going to rename it to B-ball. Alright, so I always want to select B-ball and move it. Okay, so let me go to frame, let's say frame 7, and I'll move the ball to the right. And the moment I press S, you're going to see that animation trail kind of update itself. And if I keep pressing S and I move it down, you're going to see that I'm kind of getting an ease in. But I don't want it to go extremely fast and slow down at the bottom because that doesn't look real. So I'm actually going to move it closer to the top of this arc. Alright, see how I'm kind of getting it closer there? Alright. And I'll move it to the right to form a little more of an arc. Alright, cool. So if I need to delete any one of these ghosts, all I have to do is click on it. Alright, click on one of these transforms, press the up arrow, and then delete. Alright, so now I'm going to shorten my range slider. Alright, shorten my range slider to be about 1 to frame 16. And I'm going to press play so I could view just that particular bounce. Alright, so kind of look at it over and over. And it feels a little slow. Or I can simply go to the Windows, Play Blast option box, and then change my Play Blast options to go from frame 1. I like to extend it just a little bit longer than what it is and make sure it's not saving anywhere. Click Play Blast, and I'll kind of like view this over and over, but I won't get too in depth. So I just press play. Alright, so like that arc feels a little off, so I have to move it back to the left. The ease out feels pretty natural. Again, the things that you're looking for are things that don't feel natural, right? So like as a ball goes, it goes forward and it goes down. Doesn't really feel like a natural arc. So I'll take that position, and I remember it was frame 7, right? So I'll move frame 7 to the left just a little bit. I'll press S, and I'll do another play blast just to kind of see what that looks like. The arc feels a little better. Maybe the first position I want to move a little bit higher to the left. Alright, so let's see what that looks like. Press play. Still feels a little slow. So what I think I'm going to do is go into my Windows, Animation, Editors, and I'll go into the dope sheet. And what I want to do is look at frame 1 through 15 because that's my first bounce. Alright, so this is for my frame 1. It tells me it's at frame 1 here. This is that arc that I was working on at frame 7, and this is my bounce. So I'm not worried about everything else. If I do this and like zoom out, then I might get really confused looking at all these keys. I'm just worried about my first ease out and my arc. So I think I want to take that frame 7, right? Frame 7, which is that position here. And I think I want to shorten it. I think I want to make it go to frame 5. So I'm just going to press W, hold middle mouse button, drag it over. Let's try 2 frames. Let's see what that looks like. So I go Windows, Play Blast. Alright, looks like it's a little bit slower at the bottom. Alright, I think I know what I need to do. Animation, dope sheet. I'll move it back over to the right. And I'm going to shorten the number of frames between frame 6 and frame 15. Okay, there's too many frames here. Too many frames here. Or, again, I could just take my frame 1 and move it up a little bit higher. So I'm going to click on the ball, go back into the Visualize, Create Animation Snapshot, and I'm going to click on my handle and then move it just up a little bit higher. Press S and it's going to update. I go to frame 6, I'll move that guy up. Alright, so the arc looks a little bit off. Press S. I'll move it up closer to that position. I'll click on the ghost, press the up arrow, and then delete. So let's see what this looks like. Animation, Windows, Play Blast. Alright, it feels a little more natural. Maybe I could work on the speed. I think everything after frame 6 to frame 15 probably needs to be shortened. It might just be too many keyframes. So I'm going to go back into my Windows, Animation, Editors, Dope Sheet, and I'm going to shorten all my keyframes. So I'm going to press A in my dope sheet so I can see all my keyframes. Alright. I'm going to select all of my keys to the right of the my ease out. Press middle mouse button and drag them closer to there. So you can see that my bounce that used to be at frame 15 is now at frame 12. So let's see what that looks like. Windows, Play Blast. Alright. There we go. It feels a little more natural. Right? There's not so many frames after that. Okay, cool. So you can see it's a little bit of a process. I'm working on one bounce to the other. Now, I'm going to shorten my range slider so that I can focus on my first bounce and my second bounce. Alright, so this is a good practice of using a range slider. Alright, so I'm pretty much cropping my first bounce. Alright, so hits it at the floor at frame 12, goes up in the air at frame 19, hits the floor at frame 28. Alright, now I'm going to give you guys a preview of the bounce, the first bounce from frame 12 to frame 28. So I'll click on the ball, I'll go to Visualize, Create Animation Snapshot option box. I'll start at frame 12 and I'll end at frame 28. I'll click Snapshot, and so this is what I see visually, right? Okay, this doesn't look very appealing. So I'm going to go to frame 12 and I know that at frame 19 is the top of my arc. Somewhere before that key position, I want to add an ease in. I want this arc to look really nice. And then somewhere after my key position at 19, maybe 2 frames, maybe 3, I want to do the ease out. So let me go to frame 16. I'm going to move this position up and closer to the position at 19. And I'm going to press S. So what am I looking for in this particular arc? I'm looking, first of all, for an arc as well as a nice ease in. Alright, so that looks pretty good visually. And I say visually because I've taught you guys that an ease in looks something like, okay, I don't know why it keeps doing that weird thing there. An ease in looks like this, right? There's a lot of space, and then eventually it starts to slow down and overlap, right? Alright, that's the ease in, and the ease out means it overlaps and then it starts to have more space and go faster and faster. But now we're doing this along an arc, right? We're doing this along an arc. So we have that position there, that position there, and that position here, right? So we're adding a position, right? We're adding a position, let me change the color to red, which is our ease in, somewhere right here before we get to that position, and then after. And we're going to allow Maya to give us a few keyframes, alright? A few in-betweens. And those in-betweens are going to be somewhere along this arc. So you can see the ease in is 1, 2, 3 positions before the arc, and then 1, 2, 3 positions after that key pose. Alright? So it might be a slow ease in, it might be a fast ease in. So let me click on my curve. And alright, so this is my ease in. And then I'll go to 1, 2, 3 positions after. I'll move it to the right. I'll set a key, and I'll move it up. I'm moving it to the right so I can visually see the ease, the arc, and then I'll move it up so I can get a nice ease out. And I'm trying to get a really nice curve here at the top. Alright, so let's press S. If I press comma, it's going to take me to the position. So if I press, right, so I'm not visually seeing that. I'm not having to click here. Okay, so I'm going to click on that ghost, press the up key, press delete, click on my Windows, Play Blast option box, and now I'm going to go from frame 1 to frame 28 and view my ease in, ease out. Alright. Not too bad. I think that it feels a little linear at the top. So I feel like it's almost like hovering here. So take that position. I'll go to frame 16, which is my first position for my ease out, or sorry, ease in, and I think I'm gonna move it down just a little bit. I'll press S, and I go to my frame 22, which was my ease out. I think I'll move that down a little bit. If I click on the ball and go to the snapshot, it looks a little different than before. So let me delete the snapshot. I'll go to Windows, Play Blast, and I'll press play. Alright, not too bad. I can kind of polish that a little more. I'll go back to frame 16, and maybe I'll move it down a little more. Press S. I'll take that position, move it down just a little bit, and let's watch that again. Windows, Play Blast, press play. Not too bad. Okay, so I'm going to do this for the entire arc. Alright, so now I'm going to focus on this next bounce, which is from frame 28 to frame 40. Change my range slider. Let's do that. And let me just press play. Alright. So I'll click on the ball, go back to visualize, create snapshot option box, and that was from frame 28 to frame 40. I'll press snapshot. And okay, so this is my next one. Now I'm working with less in-betweens. I'm actually working with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in-betweens. So maybe I won't select 3 keyframes. Maybe I'll just select 2, right? 2 frames before the key position at frame 34. So let's go to frame 32. I'll move it up and to the left. You see, I just kind of do that. If I wanted to delete that position, I can just right mouse click on it, press delete, and maybe I'll go to frame 31 and press S. And then I'll go to, let's say, frame maybe 37, and move it here, move it up to the right. So every time I'm moving it, I'm pressing S on the keyboard so that I can see the update. Alright. Okay, I'll click on that ghost. Press the up key and then delete, and now I'll click on the create animation snapshot, and I'm sorry, not animation snapshot, but Windows Play Blast option box. I'll view that from frame 1 to frame 40 so I could see all of it coming together. And I'll press Play Blast, and now I'll press play. So as you kind of piece this thing together, you're trying to look for consistency. You're making sure that nothing feels too out of place. And the next phase, after we do all of our ease in and ease out positions, we're going to do another phase, and that's called polishing. Polishing is like going into our graph editor, right? So we're going to go from the first bounce all the way to the end. And then the last phase is going to be going into our graph editor. So that's Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And this thing here can be very confusing and daunting if you don't know what you're doing. But what I'm looking for in my graph editor, as I click on, let's say, my translate Y and press A, I want to make sure that these arcs, let me zoom in a little bit, don't look so pointy, right? That they're nice and smooth. I want to make sure that my translate Z, right, as an object moves from left to right, that it doesn't have any weird, like spikes in the animation. All right, otherwise that's going to affect the movement. I'm going to look at my translate X, and it always should stay flat because it's not moving left and right. Okay, so these are some things that I'll teach you guys as time comes, how to move curves, to change the actual shape and polish it. So what we have right now from frame 1 to frame 40 is unpolished, but it has all of our major positions so far. Our ease in, our ease out, it has our arcs. Right? So it's coming along. Right? It's not perfect, but we'll get it there. Alright, so that's the end of blocking 2. Just to recap, we're working on the first arc here, and we're using the animation snapshot. If you don't want to use the animation snapshot because maybe it's very confusing, you can always just click on your object and, let's say, let me delete my ease in and ease out that I just created for us so we have more of a blank canvas. Alright, so I'm deleting what I did earlier. And so say I go from frame 1 to 12 and I don't like the way it's moving along this path. Right? It looks very linear. I can simply put my finger on the screen, right, at frame 1. I'll go a few frames after, maybe frame 6, and I'll move this guy up and closer to where my finger is on the screen. And I'll press S, and I'll scrub through the time slider, right? Or you could press comma and period, right? So comma allows you to go backwards, period allows you to go forward. So I'm just looking at these two positions. I'm like comparing, I'm like, okay, should it go forward a little more? Alright, I'll move it here, I'll press S. What about here to here? What does that distance looks like? Alright, so maybe go to frame 6, I'll move it to the left, and maybe I'll move it up, I'll press S. So I'm kind of doing what the old Disney animators used to do when they would flip through frames, right? Maybe I'll take this position, I'll move it down a little bit and press S. So I'm making sure that my ease out position at frame 6 isn't too far like that way. Because if it was, then it would look really weird, right? That arc would look really weird. So you don't want your arc and your ease in position to go too far. So again, I'll take this here, I'll press S. And it feels like it's going straight up and down here, right? So I'll take that position, I'll move it back. I'll press S. Right, that feels good. Again, we want to play blast it from frame 1 to frame 12 and look at that animation. Right? Feels pretty good. And we didn't even have to use our snapshot. I'll go to frame 12. The frame, I think it was 28. Alright. So go a few, actually I want my frame 19 to move over just a frame. So I'll go to frame, let's say 16. I'll set a key. I'll go to frame 23. I'll set a key. And now I just press comma and period. Okay, so here to here feels very linear, right? And I need to make an arc. So this is hit the floor. That's my ease in. That's the top of my arc. So I want my ease in to go up just a little bit. I'll press S. So I'm trying to visualize an arc as I go across these frames. Maybe I move it up again, maybe to the right. I'll press S. So maybe I'll take 20 and I'll move it down just a little bit. Alright, so those two feel pretty good. And then right there. Maybe I'll move this guy up a little bit. Set a key and maybe to the right so I can form an arc. Alright, let's see what that looks like. And now I'll go to Windows, Play Blast option box, frame 12 to frame 28, and I'll view that. And I'll press play. So that looks pretty good to me. And then I'll look at that one from frame 1, and I'll press play blast. So maybe it goes up too slow. Maybe it should be a little bit faster. So I'll go back here. I'll move this guy up a little more. Press S. I'll go to frame 20. I'll move this guy up. I'll go to frame 23 and I'll move this guy up. Just so that the bounce is higher. I just want that bounce to be a little bit higher. Because I want my ease in to feel as though it's really bouncing off the floor and not kind of floating up. So let's go back here to Play Blast. See, now it really feels like it's bouncing, boing, right? It feels like it's bouncing off the floor. It's going a little bit higher than it was before. Okay? So these are both methods that I use from time to time. You know, using the dope sheet to shorten keyframes, using the animation snapshot to visually see my in-betweens, which I think can be kind of confusing for freshmen or people that are fairly new to the software. Or you can do it the way I just did, which is kind of eyeballing it and getting a real feeling for the ease in and ease out. Okay, so I hope this has benefited you guys, and that's it.